The New York Rangers have a major opportunity with GM Chris Drury possibly opting to sign multiple star players earlier than expected. And with most free agents off the market at this point in the offseason, there are major opportunities for multiple New York Rangers to have standout seasons. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 80% of you watching our videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And we're going to dive right into it. There's a lot of opportunity across the entire Rangers organization and some interesting contract negotiations going on, of course. We know with the Ryan Lindgren stuff, and some new contracts that may be signed because, earlier than expected, because multiple Rangers are due for major raises heading into next season. We're going to dive right into it. This was Vince, just posted this article. Are the New York Rangers done yet? Here's everything I've gathered on the offseason that's gone quiet, packed into 5 thoughts on the likelihood of more moves, the latest buzz on RFAs, Lindgren, of course, which we'll touch on a little bit, but I want to focus on more, the state of the lineup, because we know Jacob Trouba probably won't be moving from the Rangers at least this season or this offseason, and we kind of know what Lindgren's going to get. They're just trying to decide the term on the contract. So there were some interesting tidbits in this article, and the Rangers very firmly fall into that category with their passionate fan base still feeling the sting of coming 2 wins short of the Stanley Cup final for the second time in 3 years. They hope to see team president Chris Drury execute a few bold moves to push a good but perhaps not great roster over the championship hump, but those ambitious plans have yet to materialize. And I think that is a sentiment that all Rangers fans feel and share, because they feel like the Rangers should be a Stanley Cup championship team, but maybe aren't quite there or good enough yet. So they were expecting fireworks this past offseason. I say this past offseason, we're still in the offseason, but this past July 1st, and it didn't really happen. I think that's because Drury believes that the players coming up have enough talent, we'll get to that in a second, to kind of fill in the gaps, and that the team is good enough, right? And whether you believe that or not, the team is still very good. President's Trophy winning team, and went to the 3rd round. We're 2 wins short of a Stanley Cup final for the second time in 3 years. And it's the Atlantic Division is a hard division. Most of the Stanley Cup winners have come out of that division in the last 5 years. So it is a hard division to, get out of, first of all, and for the Rangers to play that team, come the 3rd round. So whatever team that may end up being at the time, the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? But I think that's something that all Rangers fans are sharing right now. And when you look at projecting the forward group, the forwards still have a similar run it back look with a couple changes along the fringes and a few young guys knocking on the door. Now, Vince goes really in depth, and I don't want to spoil the entire article, so if you want to read it, go check it out on his Twitter. But some very interesting tidbits here. And it doesn't look like a trade is coming imminently for a right winger or a first line right winger, but the top 6 is pretty much set. The true top line will remain intact with Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. Lafreniere having a breakout season last year, and we'll get to him in just a second as well. But with Smith getting the first chance to fill the ever-present right wing void next to Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad, right? So I think that'll be interesting, at least to start the season. A lot of people, I saw the comments and online, were thinking Riley Smith is going to be a bottom 6 player. I don't think so. He was brought in to be a top 6 player and see if he can mesh with some of those players. Now, we've seen it in the past where a guy like Phil Kessel, top 6 player, gets traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, ends up making one of the best 3rd lines in hockey, and they win the Stanley Cup. I wouldn't mind that either, but for the time being, to start the season, I think Riley Smith will be on the in the top 6 somewhere. At least they'll figure it out, but I think you don't touch that Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere line, at least for the start of the season. The underlying numbers have been positive for the 33-year-old former Cup champion at pretty much every stop, including Pittsburgh, which was considered a down year, but if you look at his advanced stats, he was still pretty good. I think it was just a fact of the team wasn't great, right? Like, Pittsburgh didn't make the playoffs, and there was a lot of, they were really disappointing last year, I think, in their play for their fans too. But anyway, enough about the Penguins. Back to the Rangers. Kreider and Zibanejad need to create more offense 5-on-5, and Riley Smith might be able to help them with that. So I think there's a great opportunity for Riley Smith in that role. And if you go further about the bottom six, Rempe is putting in a lot of work. We had a video on that just, I think, a week ago. Rempe is putting in a lot of work, not only on the hockey skills, but of course the enforcer role with the fighting. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with this season. Othman is expected to take a big jump this season, right? You got Brett Berard, who can take a leap into the lineup this year. There's a lot of names, right? And I'm looking at Othman specifically, and obviously Rempe to, take on roles where Laviolette can trust these guys, right? Rempe talked about it in his season exit interview that he wants to be trusted more by Laviolette and used in certain situations, right? And he wants more ice time. He wants to be able to work on his skating and all these things. So he's going to be working on those things this summer, all throughout the summer. When he comes into the lineup in October, I'm very excited to see what he's able to bring to the table this year, including the fighting, being the enforcer role, right? Obviously, don't get in a fight every single game. It's not sustainable. But when needed, this is a very good player in that role for the New York Rangers. He is a monster. And when he learns to fight, he's going to be hard to move. So I'm really excited to see that. And obviously, there's a lot of players in Hartford that were showing signs of, they could come up and fill in gaps throughout the lineup. So I think the Rangers are really banking on that this year. And, it's been tough in years past developing certain players. And I said that about Lafreniere. Obviously, the pandemic, I think, affected a lot of those players drafted in 2019, 2020, 2021, right? Stuff like that. So I think we're finally starting to see that emerge, those skills. And I think a lot of players in Hartford can come up and provide that as well for the Rangers. And even more ice time could be available for Kakko if Kakko is ultimately traded. But one source indicated that the Blue Shirts weren't thrilled with the offers that came in around the draft. Teams were trying to buy low on the former number 2 overall pick, with Drury rightly holding off until someone ups the ante, because I personally still think there is something there with Kaapo Kakko, and so does Igor Shesterkin, right? I see how he trains, how he plays, what kind of person he is. He just needs trust and a little luck, and he can have a great season, and that is goaltender Igor Shesterkin on Kaapo Kakko. And I think it was very interesting that he came out and said these things on a podcast just this past week. He goes, I see how he trains, right? And how he plays. He believes that he just needs a little more trust, maybe from the coaching staff, which is something that we talked about in the past at the end of the season, and he can have a great season, right? He just needs a little bit of luck as well. I still think there is something to this player, and I think moving off of him for the sake of moving off of him would be a mistake, right? They'd be giving away a really talented player just to move off of him, and I think that's not the move at this point. If you get an offer that is good, that would make the team better, then I think you go for it. But at this point, don't trade him for the sake of trading him. It would be irresponsible. I think they can get something better. And in terms of what Drury or what Rangers fans can look forward to, I think the offseason at least is done. They're going to see what they have with this team, including Lindgren, once they get that done into the season. But the conversation was brief. But in a recent episode of the SDP, Chris Johnson says he likes the idea of what Chris Drury is going to do, doesn't believe the New York Rangers are done and could see them getting aggressive in season. So I think Drury is leaving a lot of cap space open for the regular season, which could be a good thing for the Rangers, right? And last thing I'll touch on is Igor Shesterkin and Artemi Panarin were included in the top 10 New York athletes right now list. So shout out to them for that, their influence and obviously their play. So the New York Rangers, again, have a major opportunity. They're poised to have an amazing season next year with a lot of players. Kakko could have a better season, right? I think they're going to hang on to him. Don't trade him for the sake of trading him. Lafreniere showed last year he can put together great seasons now. I think he's going to take off from here. And the rest of the lineup, right? I think you have to have trust in the lineup because a lot of players are due for major raises. What does Lafreniere's extension look like? We had a video on that just before this one, so go check that out and what his, the number may look like. And Shesterkin, right, needs a contract as well. So very interesting. I wonder if they end up signing those earlier than expected, although there were some rumblings that Lafreniere won't be signed. We'll get into that very briefly. Won't be signed until next offseason. The Rangers team president, Chris Drury, has a lot on his plate this offseason, but signing breakout winner Alexis Lafreniere to an extension doesn't appear to be on the to-do list. All indications are that the two sides will hold off negotiations until next summer, according to a person with knowledge of the situation, part of the USA Today net work, and that could work in the Rangers' favor or not. If he goes off for another electric season like he did last year, he could be wanting more money and may be entitled to it. So I wonder if they look to lock him up a year earlier after the Quinton Byfield extension, because since that got done, things may move a little quicker for Lafreniere. But it's going to be very interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think of everything discussed in the video, including the contract situation and some opportunities for other Rangers players next season. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.